X. Yeah, that's what we do. It's human.
Yeah. I love how, in some odd sense, history works, life works. Because if we follow the legend, if Troy never fell, Romulus and Rem's ancestor would never come to Rome, to Italy, and we would never have maybe Rome built. But speaking about great people, let's speak about Julius Caesar. We haven't mentioned him yet. It's hard to pinpoint what moment of his life defined Julius Caesar, right? But certainly one of pivotal moments was the crossing of the Rubicon. So how did you perceive Caesar in this point of no return? How do you understand his never-ending ambitions? What would Caesar say?
It's I mean, the marvelous thing about that period is that because to a great extent because of the orator Cicero, because of his letters, we have so much more information of what was happening, but also what people were saying, all the rumors, the false reports, because a couple of months before this, in the previous year, the story went around Rome that Julius Caesar had marched into Italy, and one of the consuls of the year takes a sword to Pompey and tells him to defend the Republic without actually saying by name against Julius Caesar, but everybody knows that. And then a few days later, they're all embarrassed because they realize actually he hasn't. He's still in his province. He hasn't done anything. So there isn't the civil war that we thought was going to. You get that sense that the frustrating bit is that in antiquity, a collection of letters written by Julius Caesar to Cicero and by Cicero back to Caesar survived. And only a handful of them have led, same as there were also letters to Augustus and a collection to Pompey that haven't been preserved. So there are aspects we don't know because Cicero, by this time, is outside Rome. He's come back from Cilicia, southern Turkey today, and he's hoping to get a triumph for a very minor campaign on the border with Syria. So he's got a few troops, which means he's got the embarrassment of he has military authority at that time, and there's this civil war breaking out, so he can't really stay out of it. But he doesn't know what's going on. He's trying to learn it. This is a guess. And again, we've got to come back to what we said earlier. You've got to be very clear when you're saying that. But I suspect each side thought that the other one would back down, that they could threaten. It was one of those cases where they think surely they won't fight over this, because essentially there is no ideological difference between Julius Caesar and the senators who oppose him. And again, modern scholars will often say Julius Caesar fights the Senate. That's not true. The majority of the Senate just doesn't want to fight anybody. They don't want to get killed. They don't want to pick the wrong side. And they don't want a civil war. Who would? You don't want your estates devastated by the armies coming through. So it's a group of senators who don't like Julius Caesar or think that he's finished or think this is going to be the winning side are bitterly opposed to him. And they wish to end his career, or at the very least make him dependent on Pompey. So he's going to take a big blow to his prestige. Julius Caesar, on the other hand, is willing to fight a civil war and plunge the world into chaos to protect his reputation and his status. And, while you can see his point of view on the basis that he's been legally voted all these offices, all these commands in Gaul, he's been given he has had more days of public thanksgiving voted to him by the Senate and the people of Rome in the last 10 years than any Roman general up until this point, including Pompey. So until just recently, everyone's been saying, great, marvelous, look what you're doing. Isn't this wonderful? Yeah, we never like the Gauls anyway. They're our traditional enemy. Well done, this sort of thing. And suddenly they turn on him and say, oh, no, you can't have this and you can't have that. So I think neither side can quite believe that the other one will fight. They think in the end they can threaten and posture. And it's interesting that Caesar, yes, on the one hand, crossing the Rubicon is that moment where from that point on, you could say that he isn't legally allowed to command the soldiers he commands. He hasn't been told by the Senate to come back for this reason. So he is, from that point on, he's a rebel. He is challenging the state. But he keeps on asking, if you follow day by day what happens in those next few months, he keeps on saying he wants to talk. He wants to negotiate. He wants to do a deal. He wants to talk. Can he meet Pompey face to face? Can we just sort this out? And Pompey's allies won't let Pompey meet him because they don't trust Pompey. And the problem is Julius Caesar, one thing that does come through from all the sources is he clearly had a lot of charm. He was very persuasive. in the way that you get it with some modern politicians, even some that, sometimes people will tell you, if you're in the room with this man or this woman, you just find yourself agreeing with them, even if you don't agree with any of their politics. But there's just
Bill
something
Clinton.
about their person. Yes, I've heard, at least 2 people I've met who are very polar opposites to him politically, went to meet him and ended up donating money to his campaign and walked out of that room not knowing why. And they just couldn't understand it to this day, but they just thought, he's good. There is something. And I don't think that really came across on TV, say. I mean, maybe it's the difference between I'm British, and the style of American politics is very different to what we have over here. But Caesar clearly had that. And so I think people didn't trust him. And the people who come to hate him really hate him because they see other people won over by this charm, and that sort of annoys them all the more. And someone like Cato, clearly lacks charm. He doesn't have it. He's got a big personality, but it's not charm. He's not, people don't like him. They respect him. They're frightened of him, but they don't like him so much. It's Caesar they liked, and again, there's one of the problems is, you get the sources suggesting this whole soap opera element of Roman politics where, Caesar is having this affair with Cato's half-sister, the mother of Brutus. So all of this is going on in the background. So yes, there's a lot of reasons for you not to like this guy. But in the end, you feel this civil war is pointless. And there is something frustrating when you're writing about it, because you really think if these people could have just sat down and talked it through, what would have been so terrible if Julius Caesar had come back and had a second consulship and then maybe gone on to another province? I don't think that really was the end of the Roman world or the monarchy that would in fact come. But again, people at the time clearly didn't believe that. They thought this person is a real threat to us. And it's so you feel there's a lot of misunderstanding. But I think some of it comes back to this Roman tradition we were talking about when we were talking about warfare, of not giving in. And it's one of the reasons Roman civil wars are so bitter, is that all of your sort of your upbringing as an aristocrat is all about you keep fighting and you just keep fighting and you never quit and you'll win in the end. And when you've got 2 groups of people who've been brought up the same way, who both think that way, then your civil wars are going to be bad because nobody's going to give in and you can't really negotiate. And Roman civil wars don't end with negotiation. You have the sort of temporary truces between Mark Antony and Octavian, Augustus, call him what you will at that stage, and Lepidus, but it doesn't last. And most of them you fight to the death. And Caesar is the oddity in that he doesn't kill his opponents. He keeps boasting of his clemency, his clementia, and saying it's a new way of victory. And he captures people, lets them go, and then they fight him again. And sometimes he lets them go a second time before he kills them the third time. And of course, later, Antony and Octavian will say, well, Caesar pardoned all these people like Brutus and Cassius, and look what they did to him. So we're not going to make the same mistake. So it's...
We stay genuine, uncensored and unscripted, and we always will, as we have to order our usual. Share us and subscribe us, and stay tuned until the next Wednesday.